Hey everybody, welcome to Tick Tickle new chair edition. So luxurious, I feel so fucking regal. Now I know a lot of you have been asking for a new secondhand GPU buyer's guide, but with the market being so fucky right now, that doesn't really make for a very interesting video since prices are like high across the board. However, being that GPU prices are high, and DRAM prices are high, and a whole bunch of other fucking prices are high, this is a good time to talk about where you actually still can find deals out there on the secondhand market amidst all of this shitstorm of overpricedness. So let's see if we can't get a few good bargains into your scope. First, let's talk CPUs. So in light of the G4560 of Ryzen 3 and Ryzen 5, are there any secondhand CPUs in the current market that make sense? Believe me, it's a tough sell. I mean, you're looking at the 2500K, for example, which seems like a perfectly fine price performer and actually goes reasonably well toe-to-toe versus something like the R3 1200, no problem in terms of raw performance at least. But when you start to compare costs and the age of the product, even with DDR4 in consideration, which is ridiculously expensive, the Ryzen 3 build, brand new in box with new features on the motherboard and all that, still seems kind of like the better deal. But some locked processors, like the i5-2400, which I have lauded in the past as being a great budget CPU, have actually gotten considerably cheaper, like super fucking dirt cheap, to the point where you can see like fully still assembled and functioning pre-builts for anywhere from $50 to $60 Canadian here. And they include some DDR3 RAM, maybe a hard drive that you can use, and very possibly, if you're lucky, a motherboard that is non-proprietary in terms of its connectors that you can transplant out of the unit and put into a budget gaming build. And that's really all there is, to be honest with you. Anything older than Sandy Bridge at this point really doesn't quite cut the mustard, and you're going to run into some serious CPU limitations on a lot of modern games. And just as a word of warning, Haswell processors right now are grossly overpriced, and the reason for that is they are the last CPU, practically speaking anyway, we don't count Skylake because nobody bought the DDR3 motherboards, that actually supports DDR3 RAM, which is actually, by comparison to DDR4 especially, really cheap these days. So there are savings to be had, but it's not with Haswell, unfortunately. So on to GPUs. Is there a GPU deal right now that makes a lot of sense in light of the Ethereum craze? It's hard enough as a layperson not knowing how long these cards have been in use, deployed in the field, under what conditions they've been stressed and put under during their life. But you couple all that uncertainty with the fact that prices are just out of control and fluctuating on a daily basis, and it becomes just a little bit too much to chew for a lot of people. And when you couple that with the fact that budget options are actually really good these days, and cards like the 1050 will get you by for almost any modern game in a pinch, no problem, the incentive to buy secondhand is not really there. Now, I have purchased several second-hand GTX 1050s and 1050 Ti's for as low as $100 Canadian, and I think the 1050 Ti ended up costing me $130. Those are definitely the direction I would recommend people going, because you can pretty much assume that those cards are safe and they've been under light load conditions their whole life. They usually run pretty cool, even in the single fan configurations. But aside from that, if there's one graphics card that I've actually seen come down in price and sort of fit more comfortably into where it falls into the performance hierarchy, it's actually the GTX 670, which I absolutely trashed in my last guide as being under-supported in terms of driver innovation and overpriced. I've picked up several mid-range Kepler GPUs over the last little while, so that includes the 670, even the 680, 770, 760, all those cards right now for anywhere between $50 and $70 here in Canada recently, which is a significant drop over my last guide. And at that price, which is like roughly half of what you pay for a 1050 Ti, it starts to get considerable, and it's something that I would recommend you at least look into. Almost anything else, including the beloved R9 290, which was once the price performance value king in its class, just unparalleled in terms of how little it cost on the secondhand market, has become just out of reach for most people and doesn't make any goddamn sense. Now, SSDs are an interesting topic of discussion because there were rumors that there was going to be a NAND shortage upcoming, and because of mobile devices and all that jazz, Flash just was in short supply. And that's believable because we know, and we've had several independent sources confirm that DRAM's in short supply, and largely there's overlap there. These are similar fabs that are just tooled differently, owned by the same companies, and they're going towards the same devices. So you would think that if there's a DRAM shortage, there would also be a NAND shortage. But SSD prices have actually not gone up all that much. They just haven't fallen at the rate that people expected given the increase in storage and the reduction in production costs. Now, once again, thanks to off-lease systems, thanks to laptops and all these things that are being torn apart after being a certain number of years old, there are still a lot of 120 and 256 gigabyte SSDs on the secondhand market. All of them OEM, all of them considerably cheaper than retail. And because all you really care about when it comes to SSD performance are reduced seat times, which you get with almost any SSD, it's a good value to buy over something at retail. That might technically be faster, but not in a way that you'll ever experience or notice. I think the days of me buying stacks of 128 or 256 gigabyte drives for like $30 to $50 a piece might be over for the time being. All of my regular suppliers have kind of like tiptoed back and been like, I think I'm out of that for right now. But I still think you can get them for 60 to 70 bucks for the 256 gigabyte varieties on Kijiji from just random people. I see them all the time going for about 80 to 85 with a little bit of talking down and some creativity. Pretty sure you can still get by and save yourself a good 20 to 30% over retail, which would make it more than worth it. Elephant in the room, obviously DRAM prices at retail are through the fucking roof right now because of the supply shortage. DDR4 is a new protocol. You're not going to find too much of it on the secondhand market available for any significant amount less than retail, but there does exist some, so certainly have a look if you insist on buying something that's recent. But DDR3, of course, right now is flooding the market. Much like DDR2 did back when it was first replaced by DDR3, it's going to be that way for at least another 1.5 to 2 years before it starts to become a little bit more scarce and might actually increase in value to the point where it becomes an inviable option. For the time being, eat as much of that shit up as you can find. And last up, let's talk about secondhand power supplies. Now, power supplies are strange because they've gone through a bit of a transition in the last decade or so. Power supplies back in the day, like 10 plus years ago, they had very weak 12-volt rails, and things like multi 12-volt rail configurations actually mattered when making a purchase. So buying power supplies secondhand was not always advisable. So while I would strongly recommend against buying really old power supplies, we're now getting into that period where units that are usable in today's market reliably are now in the 3 to 4 year old range and becoming rather affordable when bought secondhand and might still actually be in warranty. And speaking of warranties, EVGA's warranty service for power supplies is absolutely fantastic. And a lot of people who have defective units will send them back and get replacements, but they won't want to wait that 1 or 2 week period it takes to ship it back and get it back, or even with cross shipping, they're still impatient. So they go out and buy a brand new unit that's often of better quality and decide to keep that as their permanent unit, and when they get the RMA replacement back, they sell it secondhand. I've purchased all sorts of units this way, everything from the 700B all the way down to the original 450W or 430W, all of those units in there I've gotten for anywhere from 40 to 50% off of retail, and usually they're brand new. You can tell the sticker hasn't even been pulled off of them in a lot of cases, and regardless will still be under warranty as long as the seller gives you the receipt, which he should, because why the hell not? And if you're questioning the legitimacy of taking a receipt from somebody secondhand and representing yourself as the original purchaser of that item, anyhow guys, thank you very much for watching. My next full-length video coming probably next weekend should be my personal rig update, so stay tuned for that. It should be exciting. And Sunday, that is tomorrow, which I believe is September the 3rd, unless my math is not correct, I'm going to be streaming at some point during that day. I'm not exactly sure when yet. Let's assume somewhere between 2 and 4 Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to be giving away dozens of Steam keys. Granted, all of them like shitty indie games, so I don't want to hype it up too much. But it's going to be audience participation. We're going to be playing Use Your Words, which means you can join in with your smartphone and play along with me. That's all. That's going to be fun. So make sure you come along for that. Bring a condom, and I'll see you tomorrow.